Christian TikTok is a very strange place.
You want proof of God? Okay. Look around you. Look at the ocean.
That's basically just a rock concert. Kids like that stuff.
Did you know that this end-time Bible prophecy is happening right in front of your eyes and nobody is talking about it?
My dad was in the newspaper.
Your local paper?
God is so real. And there's a reality of his existence in which makes you not even able to think. Not able to do things.
Oh, I love that classic apologetic. I can't think or do things, therefore God must be real.
Y'all really out here saying God isn't real, and you hate him. So which one is it?
Do you want to know why Christians are so susceptible to conspiracy theories? It's because we've been trained to see an enemy that most of the world doesn't even believe exists. And if you only knew what to look for, you would see him too.
I don't think this is the flex that she thinks it is. But it does seem to be true that religious people, and especially evangelicals, are more susceptible to conspiracy theories than most other groups. Why is that? Try that one more time. Hey everybody, thank you so much for liking and subscribing and commenting and all that wonderful stuff, because you're all wonderful people. I put the links down below for the social media, as well as our merch and our Patreon. I really appreciate you over there at Patreon. I've been really good at getting myself demonetized, or at least limited ads lately, and all the support there really helps keep this thing afloat. So thank you so much, and if you want to join the party, we'd love to have you join that party. We've all heard a conspiracy theory or two in our time, and maybe even bought into some. Like all the conspiracy theories around the JFK assassination.
Lee Harvey Oswald was not a male model.
You're goddamn right he wasn't, but those two lookers who capped Kennedy from the grassy knoll sure as shit were.
Or that the moon landing was fake, or that the government is poisoning us with chemtrails, or that fluoride in the water is for mind control purposes, or, that the earth is flat.
But for the people attending the first Flat Earth International Conference here in Cary, North Carolina, their Earth is indisputably not round.
But in the last couple of years, conspiracy theories have gone up to 11 with things like QAnon.
Precise numbers are impossible to gauge, but millions of people are thought to be caught up in QAnon's wacky beliefs.
There are people in QAnon who are really just concerned about children. There are people in QAnon who really just hate Hillary Clinton. And there are people who do want to overthrow the government. So it appeals to almost everybody, and it really is almost anybody that can be sucked into it.
But one group that seems to buy into it more than anyone else is white evangelical Christians.
Evangelical Christians are more likely than other religious groups to believe in certain conspiracy theories, like that Trump won the 2020 election or in QAnon theories, according to a study by the Conservative American Enterprise Institute.
A survey from January says more than a quarter of white evangelicals believe the QAnon conspiracy theories are true.
27% of white evangelicals say the idea that Donald Trump has been fighting a group of child traffickers, a key tenet of the conspiracy theory, is mostly or completely accurate, according to a study by the Conservative American Enterprise Institute.
I mean, I get it. I too want to save children from bad people, but this movement is dangerous.
You might have seen people sharing the hashtag Save the Children or Save Our Children over the past few months on social media. But much of this online activity has nothing to do with the respected and real Save the Children charity, which has been around for more than 100 years. Its name, Save the Children, has been hijacked by followers of the QAnon conspiracy theory. In a statement, the charity has emphasized they have nothing to do with this movement.
Several signs were references to other unfounded conspiracy theories alleging rings in the Democratic Party. Conspiracies also shared on the Facebook page that organized the event, some posts calling for violence.
You have to do your own research and know your own facts and decide for yourself.
Oh yes, the conspiracy theorist scientific method. Google it and decide for yourself, because that's how facts work. Whatever you decide is true is true.
The name Save the Children, they have also seized on and are distracting from the very real and serious issue of missing and exploited children. Much of their focus instead is on conspiracy theories about Hollywood stars and Democrats.
Yeah, it's doing the opposite of what it says it's doing. It's taking resources away from organizations that are actually trying to do something for actual children.
QAnon conspiracy theories about Tom Hanks and Oprah and Democratic leaders being cannibals, and they have become completely immersed in the cult of Donald Trump.
But Jesus himself is trying to tell us about this, so...
He may have played the role of Jesus Christ in Mel Gibson's 2004 movie The Passion of the Christ, but now it seems actor Jim Caviezel is preaching a different kind of gospel, echoing the gospel of QAnon while speaking to a right-wing convention over the weekend.
You said adrenochrome.
Essentially, you have adrenaline in your body. I'll just simplify it. And when you are scared, you produce adrenaline. If a child knows he's going to die, his body will secrete this adrenaline.
Followers of QAnon are obsessed with the idea, without having any evidence, that Hollywood celebrities and other famous people torture children to extract adrenochrome, some believe to use in satanic rituals.
And this is definitely not the first time evangelicals have jumped on board with conspiracy theories. I mean, look how long they've been denying global warming.
It's very interesting, and a lot of things are proclaimed. Storms are getting worse and a lot of other things. But the periods in history show that warmer periods have actually been better for civilization. We seem to have less extreme weather. We have longer growing seasons. And we have more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere now, which is actually greening the planet.
It's greening the planet.
It's greening the planet.
That's good.
Yes, it is.
So,
$100 billion. $100 billion has been spent to make a case for global warming, contrary to scientific method. Scientific method always tries to prove a theory wrong. Doesn't spend $100 billion trying to sell it. Propagandizing pseudoscience.
And look at the satanic panic of the 80s and 90s.
The Ouija board is a seemingly harmless object, yet it can cause big problems. Dungeons & Dragons is a fantasy role-playing game that teaches demonology and other occultic themes. Palmistry and tarot cards as methods of foretelling the future have gotten many involved in the occult. Explicit horror films and heavy or black metal rock music are both popular entrances to Satanism.
Satan was infiltrating our music.
Rock and roll today, let me warn you that you may have already been conditioned to become part of this Antichrist or anti-Jesus Christ system. Now, Satan is using the rock groups as his patsies to evangelize the youth of the world. How better could he tell the young people how to turn away from Jesus and how to come to him? They are worshiping the devil. I don't think a lot of young people know they are worshiping the devil. Or the skeptics, to show them what I'm going to do, I've actually taken the exact piece of tape that you just heard it off of, and I've reverse thread the machine, and I'm going to play that exact piece of tape backwards now. Okay, just
prove
to
that you've not doctored it
I have
in
not
any way.
doctored it in any way. All right, let's go ahead and start. Okay.
I heard something there.
All right, listen for I live with Satan, exactly. You might want to turn it up just a little out here on the floor.
Did you hear that?
I live with Satan. Listen again.
Have you ever heard of a band called Judas Priest?
Well, that's what Judas needed, a priest.
Okay. Now, if you listened, you heard him say, "Oh, Satan, move in our voices." I want to play that a little slower, and I'm not saying that they put it there. I'm saying that it just sounds to me like it what might be saying that. Now, you listen yourself. Let's hear it again.
Yep, that's definitely Satan. Or that we're highly suggestible and our brains look for patterns. But no, I'll go with Satan.
My question is this. If you've embraced the greatest story ever told, if you believe in the greatest story ever told, why do you have to follow religiously these conspiracy theories brought up by Chinese cults or fringe figures in American politics? I just don't get it.
Yeah, how does this happen? How do these people get wrapped up in these conspiracy theories? I mean, first you have to look at what the pastors are preaching from the pulpit.
We're like, come on, pastors.
Yeah.
You're the key, because if pastors will wake up, people will wake up if we will rise up and be bold and speak and say no more. So it's super exciting what you just said, because the waking up is the beginning of the end. So I pray and hope that the sleeping giant will arise.
Exactly. Get the pastors and you can get the people.
And you know what? If this doesn't wake us up, what will?
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, this is crossing a line of respect, of honor for a previous president. Like him or not, he was the 45th president of the United States, and that's worthy of honor and respect. You don't just attack his home.
Right.
And how god-awful that would happen. And you're right. They're coming. You know, Trump says this a lot. They're not attacking me, he says. It's just they're going after you.
Yeah.
He's just standing in the way.
He's just in the way.
Or he's a criminal, and FBI are supposed to look at criminals. I mean, just look at how many pastors bought into COVID-19 conspiracies.
It being anti-mask and anti-vaccine is anti-government, then I'm proud to be anti-government.
As more and more Americans are getting vaccinated, resistance remains strong within one group in particular, white evangelicals.
Hallelujah, Jesus.
This hesitancy is driven by a distrust in government, misinformation, and political identity. This is not a fringe group. A quarter of Americans are evangelical.
If you think for 1 minute that those political elites actually got that vaccination, you are smoking meth in your mama's basement.
Pastor Greg Locke has grown his audience over the last year by calling COVID-19 a fake pandemic and the vaccine a scam.
Just a little caveat along all these. We're not conspiracy theorists. You know, I saw a shirt the other day that said, I need some new conspiracy theories because all mine have come true, you know. And certainly they have. So they can call us QAnon. They can call us what we want to.
Vaccine. Number one, the virus has been a scam from the beginning. It's always been politically motivated for mail-in ballots and voter ID. That's what has got a new administration in the White House today.
So what do I find out, Mac? What do I find out? There is no Pepe Sylvia. The man does not exist, okay? So I decided, oh, shit, buddy, I gotta dig a little deeper. There's no Pepe Sylvia. You gotta be kidding me. I got boxes full of Pepe.
People attend a religious service because they care what the religious leader has to say. So yeah, they have a huge impact on what people think. And that can be very dangerous. And even though it's illegal for churches to tell you how to vote in America and still keep their tax-exempt status, that doesn't stop pastors from preaching their political opinions, no matter how far out they are.
To be free from the fake news, which is in fact a state-run propaganda television network in the United States of America that's no different than the Soviet Union or China. Let me say it this way. When 5 television networks say the same thing, same message, the same way every day, this is called brainwashing. Do yourself a favor and turn them off.
Oh, that's so dangerous. Don't trust the media, but trust me, I have the facts right. The media doesn't.
The media joyfully lied to the American people for 4 years now. They lied about President Trump's collusion with a Russian spy. There was no Russian spy. There was no collusion. There was only a congressional coup to overthrow a sitting president, which happens to be treason.
That's right. The 2 impeachments, the lawsuits, the paying hush money to adult film stars, all of that is just the media out for treason.
Oh, you're such fake news! Sad.
The senior pastor of Evangel World Prayer Center is coming under fire for this Sunday service prayer.
Those that have stolen this election, those that have cheated, I place the curse of God upon them.
Where there are political prisoners.
Yeah.
And here, it's not equal either. I mean, where's the FBI when it comes to Hillary Clinton's 33,000 emails or Hunter Biden's laptop computer, or you can go on and on. And
could you go on and on? Like, could you? Because it seems to me that it always just comes back to, what about the emails? And what about Hunter Biden's laptop? Also, the FBI did look into Hillary's emails, right? Like that was a big thing.
The private notes of the FBI agents investigating her use of a private email server revealed, redacted, but unprecedented nonetheless, the notes lay out the probe and details Clinton's own interview with the law enforcement officials.
The left gets away with anything. And they almost think that they could steal an election.
Yeah.
They get away with so much. Why wouldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why wouldn't they steal an election?
Yeah.
Because it's illegal?
When they get away with everything, and then a man named Donald Trump, who they've tried to catch on anything and everything. They make up stuff about Russia.
Yeah.
They spy on them. They've tried anything and everything. They can't find a thing, but now they're going to ransack his house.
Yeah.
I think it's a move of desperation on their part. Because
the mainstream Republican Party has abandoned our president and are running for the hills. And I said, I saw him on TV yesterday, and they did a close-up of his face. And I said, I looked into his eyes, and I could see a man that loves this country. I could see a man that knew he won, and yet it was being stolen from him. We do not endorse candidates.
But not every evangelical that buys into this stuff have pastors that preach it from the pulpit. What about them? Well, think about this. From a young age, church kids are taught not to have critical thinking skills. They are taught to live by faith and not by sight.
I live by faith and not by sight. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. I live by faith and not by sight. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Question about this video about faith we're doing. Should we hire musicians for this? Or like people who know how to sing together? No. I have faith that it'll come together.
The Bible says that we should take up the shield of faith so that we can extinguish the flaming arrows of the evil one. And if you don't already know, faith is believing in something that you can't see, right? And so when we're talking about the shield of faith, we're talking about believing. Not just believing in something, believing in Jesus Christ as our Savior.
Douglas, my friend, I have been there. I get it. I really do. Life can get you down sometimes. But if you're going to make a video for kids, you need to have some energy. Like even a little bit of energy. We grew up in a world where we ignored scientific study in exchange for people's opinions and arguments. Like whether humans and dinosaurs lived at the same time.
Those who believe in a younger age for the Earth tend to agree that the Bible does mention dinosaurs, although it never actually uses the word dinosaur. Instead, it uses the Hebrew word ta'in, which is translated a few different ways in our English Bibles. Sometimes it's sea monster, and sometimes it's serpent. It's most commonly translated dragon. The ta'in appear to have been some sort of giant reptile. These creatures are mentioned nearly 30 times in the Old Testament, and were found both on land and in water. In addition to mentioning these giant reptiles, the Bible describes a couple of creatures in such a way that scholars believe that the writers may have been describing dinosaurs. The behemoth is said to be the mightiest of all of God's creatures, a giant whose tail is likened to a cedar tree. Some scholars have tried to identify the behemoth as either an elephant or a hippopotamus. Others point out that elephants and hippopotamuses have very thin tails, nothing comparable to a cedar tree. Dinosaurs like the Brachiosaurus and the Diplodocus, on the other hand, had huge tails, which could easily be compared to a cedar tree. Nearly every ancient civilization has some sort of art depicting giant reptilian creatures.
There are a number of paintings from medieval times, the time, not the restaurant, where you can see what an artist believed an animal looked like based on the descriptions of the animals that they had heard. Like this oyster, or this elephant, or this whale, or this snail. Job was the first book of the Bible that was written. So it was written way before the Middle Ages. So maybe they got the description of animals wrong, or even maybe they made up an animal, or maybe it was dinosaurs.
Yeah. And so, listen, I'm not a genius, but if I was told, to put certain kind of animals on the ark, whether it be an elephant, okay, or a dinosaur, I wouldn't put a fully mature adult on there, okay? And if God brought the animals to the ark, I'm not sure he sent the largest, what we would know today as African elephant in the world. And I would bring a small elephant. I'm not a genius.
I'd bring a baby.
Okay? I'd bring a baby dinosaur. So what's really interesting, I'll tell you though, where they go. Okay, well, after the flood, a lot changed about the earth, including as the water began to recede. Initially, there wasn't much land. Okay, I think you could say, I don't know what percentage. At first, it was just mountain peaks that were around. So a lot of the world was covered still in water. Limited food supply, destruction of a lot of habitat. And then also in Genesis 9:3, we see that God says, now you can start to eat meat. And so I imagine that if you're looking for a food supply, you kill the largest food supply that you can kill.
Oh yeah, I think I saw that in a documentary once.
Hey, Barn, you like your steak rare? Yeah. That one's yours.
Hey! Hey, stop! Come here, you purple rodent!
I'm not a genius.
Or we were told we could disprove science by discrediting a scientist's character instead of challenging the actual science.
Charles Darwin's book, The Origin of Species, is often what they call simply The Origin of Species. This is not the whole title. They're kind of embarrassed by the whole title today because he was a racist. Of course, in 1859, most people were racists. America still had slavery in 1859. But the whole title to his book is The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or the Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. Darwin thought that there were different races of humans, different races of animals, and the strongest survived, and that was good. It was best if the weakest died off. This, of course, motivated Adolf Hitler to speed up the process.
We learned to only listen to the side of the argument that agreed with the side we already agreed with. Like when looking at the historicity of the Bible, for example, from this video from 1 Minute Apologist called How Do We Know the Bible is Historically Accurate?
You have shared how Jesus affirmed the historicity of the Bible. For instance, using the example of Jonah, just as Jonah was in the belly of the whale 3 days and 3 nights, so too will the Son of Man be. Is that an affirmation of the historicity of that event, or could somebody say, hey, this is just an affirmation of that story, be it history or not?
When Jesus said that in Matthew 12:40-42, he used a strong contrast in Greek. Just as Jonah was, so I will be. So if you're going to make Jonah into mythology, you're going to have to make his death and resurrection into mythology.
Done and done.
Or if Jesus literally died and literally rose from the dead, then it must have been a literal Jonah. You can't have one without the other.
So the way the language works, it allows you to equate them to both be fact.
And he did the same thing in Matthew 24 on the flood. Just as it was in the days of Noah, the eating, drinking, marrying before the, so it will be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. He wouldn't base such an important teaching as his death and resurrection and his second coming on a myth. Just as you believe that myth, I'd like to tell you this historical truth.
Now, I'm no historian, but I'm sure convinced now.
Here's what I do know, though. Within the second or third generation of Christians, if you could get a Christian to deny Christ as Lord and go back to the Roman gods, you wrote about it. Because Pliny the Younger writes to Trajan and says, hey, I'm getting these people who weren't eyewitnesses, people who just learned from the eyewitnesses, I'm torturing them or pushing them back toward the Roman gods. Because it seems to me one way to end the game early, get the body of Jesus, drag it around town. That's game over. That didn't happen. Or get those who said they saw him alive to recant. And guess what? That didn't happen either. And we know they were looking to do it because when they got a second generation Christian to do it, they talked about it. What we don't have is a single ancient document in which any opponent of Christianity could ever say that one of the eyewitnesses recanted.
Or that they existed. The other option is maybe there weren't any eyewitnesses, and the so-called second generation are really the ones who made it up, and that's why there are no records of the first generation recanting it, because they weren't real, which is why there are no contemporary writings about Jesus' death and resurrection. So we're told just to trust things on faith. Then we're told just to be okay with very weak arguments.
And my Bible says that God created all animals on the fifth day. And so there we go. I think the Bible does talk about the fact that there were creatures that existed.
And then you are also constantly looking for signs that the world is ending.
Horseless carriages, of course, that's the automobile.
That's Nahum chapter 2, verses 3 and 4, and says, the chariot shall rage in the streets. When? In the day of his preparation, when the Lord prepares to come back to earth.
The desert of Israel blossoming as a rose.
Isaiah 35:1.
The alignment of a 10-nation confederacy or the European Union.
Oh, that's Daniel chapters 2 and 7 and Revelation chapters 13 and 17.
Noticed all the books on the shelves, knowledge increasing.
God said to Daniel, seal the book till the time of the end. How will we know when that time is here? Knowledge shall increase.
I think we have some time. The world is ending. How do you know? Lots of books on shelf. Oh yeah, good point. There is lots of books on shelf. Since the Bible was put together, people have been convinced that the end was near.
When I see all that is going on in the world today, the signs of the times, I am aware that the coming of the Lord is getting nearer and nearer.
When I was a kid, I was told that Gorbachev was the Antichrist because he had a mark on his head, and the Bible mentions the mark of the beast on the forehead. And I was also told it was Ronald Reagan because all three of his names, Ronald, Wilson, and Reagan, had 6 letters. At one point it was Castro, another point it was Henry Kissinger, Barack Obama, pretty much any president, pretty much any Pope, most world leaders. Any major figure was thought to be the Antichrist. Every major event was thought to be a sign of the end of the world, as long as I can remember.
30% of the Bible is full of prophecy. 30%.
Does that make sense? 30% is full of prophecy? What does that remind me of?
60% of the time, it works every time.
That doesn't make sense.
Now, if prophecy wasn't important, why would God tell us so much about the future? Mm-hmm. And most of that 30% is about the times that we're living in, the end times. So, and you say, well, why would God say so much about the time we're living in? It's going to be the worst time in human history. We see what's happening in the world today. Jesus said pestilences and earthquakes and famines, that's just the birth pangs.
So you're landing on now? Like current day as the worst time in history? Like I'm not saying it's great. In fact, it's most certainly not, but the worst time in history, I think that's a bit of a stretch.
That's not the birth yet. And so what we're seeing right now is intensifying. When women have babies,
yes,
they begin to have birth pangs, but they get closer together and more severe.
Did he just mansplain childbirth to her?
What we're seeing right now, since Israel became a nation in 1948, which actually started the end time clock, we've seen an intensity in birth pangs. And so today's world, I've never seen anything like this COVID-19 thing.
So nobody involved in that photo knew how masks should be worn? This isn't a photo that I added. This is a photo that they chose. They had a whole production team. I'm just one idiot. Or maybe she's trying to catch the rain.
I've never seen what's happening in the world right now, the unrest, the famines, pestilences, killer hornets. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. And so it's just apocalyptic. But these are just the birth pangs.
Those cities, I was in a city not too long ago, and I went in to eat in the restaurant. I couldn't find anything to eat. I had to do room service because no restaurant would allow me to be fed without a card, without a vaccine. And all that is a picture of the cashless society and the 666 and how that if you don't take the mark, and I'm not talking about the vaccine, I'm talking about the system. Do you not understand the system? Something's off. Something's going on. These are not normal times, ladies and gentlemen.
Or perhaps restaurants didn't want their customers to be dead people because dead people rarely tip. But when you're looking for signs that your book was right and the world will end, you have to make these connections. That's not the point. The point is, why do so many evangelicals buy into this stuff? Because why wouldn't they? They are told to just have faith. They are told to trust certain authority without question while vilifying the people who might know what they're talking about. They are told to listen to the arguments that fit their narrative instead of evidence that points to the facts. And their theology has them looking for signs and connections that just aren't there. And of course, evangelical theology teaches over and over again that you are worthless, that you are less than, and believing in these conspiracy theories makes you feel like you are part of the in-group, like you are part of something special that only you and this group have the answers, that you are on a special team. It almost sounds like they just found another religion. Now, I'm not saying there are no conspiracies in the world, like say one that protects abusers.
200 pages long, examined hundreds of cases of sexual misconduct and abuse between 2000 and 2020. Among the findings, church leaders publicly fought calls to track ministers accused of abuse, even as they privately maintained a list hundreds of names long at one point. The report finds church leaders, quote, protected or even supported abusers for years.
And I'm not saying there aren't celebrities and politicians that might be abusers.
This morning, the investigation into whether Congressman Matt Gaetz had a sexual relationship with a 17-year-old sending shockwaves through Washington. House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy saying if those allegations turn out to be true, Gaetz will lose his committee assignments.
And I'm not saying there aren't corrupt law enforcement systems.
This week, a major step toward accountability. The Justice Department announcing federal charges, particularly civil rights violations related to Breonna's death, against 4 current and former Louisville Metro Police Department officers. 3 of the 4 officers are being charged for allegedly falsifying information in the affidavit that was used to obtain the search warrant for Breonna's apartment before she was killed. 2 of them are also facing charges for lying following the shooting.
But when you buy into all these unfounded theories, you end up causing way more damage than good. When you ignore the real world for your fantasy world, you are doing nothing good for the real world. If you have people who are involved in this stuff, be patient with them, be understanding, but also know when you need to walk away. Always be skeptical, always question everything. Thank you all for making it this far. Thank you for all your support, all you do. If you know somebody who might benefit from this, send it their way. Be careful. And thank you so much. I love you all.
Work, Sky Moon.